Well, hello and good afternoon. I hope that all is well and you enjoyed your holiday and all was well with friends and family and all of that. So, back in the saddle today. Was going to come on last night, but I was tired. So I was like, we'll do this tomorrow. So, had a lot of things I needed to kind of accomplish and get through today. But this is what I want to talk about today: the you strategy. Now, normally, and I'm not on that long, and I don't plan to be long today. But I want to drop some things on you and just bring some attention to some things. And this is just from self-experience and just having talked to quite a few people over the past several days about just the position of yourself and as an individual, as a business owner, entrepreneur, just some things to chew on, some things to think about. And so depending on how far I get, then I'll continue this conversation. So this is definitely conversation today. Hopefully it'll be motivation. But I just want to talk about some things. One of the things in this season is how you show up sets the foundation for where you go. And that largely depends on how you do the foundation, how you set it, and how you do the work. So one of the first things that I want to talk about, because there's so many people that have, in the last 24 months or so, especially since the pandemic and things of that nature, are entrepreneurs. They've started a business. They've started some type of self-owned, endeavor. And so one of the things that's so important about that is, and so oftentimes, a lot of us aspire to have our own business, to do what it is that we want to do and be independent. Well, that's what that means, independent. Independent of staff, independent of policies, processes, and procedures, independent of resources. So you're on your own to do what it is that you set out to do, what you said you desire to do, the whole 9 yards. And so one of the things that when it comes to your you strategy, I just want you to think about 5 things today. Number 1, availability. So you have to show up for you. You have to be available to do the things that you have determined that's going to require getting to where it is that you want to be. So you got to be available to do the work. You got to be available to prepare your content. You got to be able to package the content. If in fact especially if you're a knowledgepreneur. So that means you got to get up every day. And I've been saying this for a while now. You have to get up every day and you have to give God something to work with. You have to get up every day and you have to give God something to work with. Because here's the thing, if we want God to increase a thing, if we want him to open a door for a business or for a gift that we have or for a talent that we have, then we've got to give him something to work with. He can't bless a thing or increase a thing that you're not doing. So you have to be available, which means you can't, one thing about being an entrepreneur, it's just not about not clocking in somewhere. You still got to clock in. You just on your own clock. So you still got to clock in. So you've got to get up every day. You got to set a schedule and you got to put in the time to get the work done that needs to be done in order for God to increase it, in order for him to open a door for you to walk through with that information or that gift, that talent, or whatever it is that you possess. You have to put some time in. So you have to be available to you, available for you, right? Here's the thing. Hard work is the essence of success. However, that translates into discipline, which means you have to be self-disciplined to do the work. And if you have a problem being disciplined, self-discipline to do the work that needs to be done, you already have a problem. So what does that mean? That means you have to back up at level 1 for your foundation and determine how you're going to get yourself to a place of being disciplined to do the work that needs to be done in order for you to be successful at what it is that you want to do. Because now, here again, that's not going to happen overnight. There are a whole lot of other elements to it, but I'm just talking about the you factor of the strategy for getting you to the place that you're trying to go. So a couple of things about availability. Of course, the definition says the quality of being able to use or to be used or obtain, unoccupied. So that means you got to show up to do the work that's necessary to be done and not be occupied by, in other words, doing something else. So you got to set aside time. So time management is also a factor here. But the first part of it is you have to be available. You have to avail yourself to do the things, be the thing, and be in the space that you need to be in order to develop you so that you can be your best you to put forth, to bring forth what it is that you want to do. The other thing is not currently involved. So if you're involved in 17 other different things, but you're trying to make one thing grow, then you're going to have to let the other 16 go, take a back burner, and you're going to have to focus on the one that you want to be great, the one that you want to grow. So in order to show up, in order to go up, you got to show up. Right. And so in order to grow, you got to sow some time. And here again, principles that we hear all the time: seed, time, and harvest. And then you got to sow some things, right? So you got to sow some seeds of time, availing yourself to what it is that you want to do. Another thing about availability is accessibility, right? So you have to be available in order to get this work done and put this time, to determine what you need, to determine how much you know, to determine how much you need to grow, to determine, how much of the content and the elements that you have are in fact enough, and what do you need? What other resources do you need? How far can you go with what you have? So until you put some time in to determine what level of development you have and where you are, what level you are, you can't really move forward. Here-ness. Here-ness, meaning you got to be present in the moment, right? You can't say, okay, well, I'm working on my thing, but then you got 12 other things happening. You're trying to talk to 20 different people. You're distracted every 5 minutes by something. So that means you have to set a place, a space, and a time in order for you to be successful. And that's not 2 hours. So you have to establish 9 times out of 10, when you're doing a you thing, it requires more of you and it requires more of your time. Okay. And then another word that came up and I was like, that's interesting, is operability. Operability, OPERABILITY. The ability to keep a system in a safe and reliable functioning condition. Operational requirements. What are your operational requirements for you and what it is that you want your business to be, what it is that you want your endeavor to be? So that's the ability to keep a system in a safe and reliable functioning condition. So that means it's going to require your availability to be operable. So your availability is required for your operability. Okay, I'm going to leave that alone. I'm going to move on. So number 2, accountability. The fact or condition of being accountable. Other words, responsibility. What's required? What are you requiring of yourself? What are you expecting of yourself? And how are you justifying your actions and your decisions? So that means, there has to be accountability for you. So who are you accountable to? So if you're doing your own thing, I know for myself, I have a friend that I talk to about what I'm doing, what I want to do, what I'm planning to do, things of that nature. And what I've come to learn over time, that she'll come back to me and say, okay, well, how did you doing on this? And did you ever do that? And where are you on that? And so without realizing it, that accountability, when she's asking me my status and how I'm doing on things and where am I at this point, that's accountability to me. And so sometimes there have been times that I've mentioned something, said something, and it's gotten off the grid. I hadn't been working on it, or it become, one of those things that's placed on the side. Well, by sharing that has caused me to have that accountability to say, no, it's still there. I'm not working on it, but it also triggers me to go and determine where I am on that and decide whether or not that's something I'm going to continue to work on, something I'm going to continue to do, or do I need to just X that off because what? I haven't done anything with it. So setting up some type of accountability. So that's why having a coach is so important. So I have a coach, I have a mentor, but I also have an accountability partner. So when you have a coach, the same thing. That coach, that mentor is going to help you to stay on track. It's going to help you to be accountable, and it's going to help you to make sure that you get from revelation to manifestation. Because so oftentimes we don't show up for us. So that's your you strategy. So number one, availability. Number two, accountability. Then number three, responsibility. Right? So here again, we know what that is. Having a duty to deal with something or having a duty to have something. Right? So here's the thing about that. We have to be responsible when you are an entrepreneur, even for your home, if you're single or whatever the case may be, whatever your status is, married, it doesn't matter. You are responsible for that dwelling. You're responsible for that home. You're responsible for that business. So that means the buck stops with you, right? So you can't put the blame on anybody else. Whatever happens with it is on you. It's your responsibility. And you have to own that you are responsible for the decisions that are made, for the work that's done, for the efforts that go forward. In order to have be on the receiving end, you have to be responsible for the work that goes out. So if you want things to happen, if you want things to occur, you got to be responsible for the work that takes place. So in order for that, and the other thing about that is the opportunity to act independently. That's what responsibility is. So when you say, I want my own thing, I want to do my own thing, okay, well, you got to show up. Because that's your opportunity to act independently on your own, make your own decisions without authorization from anybody else but you, right? So you have to be responsible for whatever happens. You got to be responsible for the resources. You're responsible for the labor. You're responsible for the marketing. You're responsible for the finances. And so when I say resources, it's not just money. You got to be responsible for the work that's done. So that's where you have to be strategic, because you got to maximize on your strengths, the things that you do well, but then you have to employ your weaknesses. So you're responsible for the whole structure of what takes place with what you do. And so it's important that you understand the responsibility to you. You have a responsibility to you. You have to show up every day and be responsible to you and do the things that are necessary so that you can survive and so that your business can thrive. All right. Then number 4, sustainability. So once you've shown up, you're available, once you're accountable to the work, once you're responsible for the work, then you got to sustain, the work. You got to sustain the business. You got to sustain the things that are taking place in order for it to thrive and continue to grow. And so you got to figure out, how am I going to show up? How am I going to do this thing? What is the strategy for me? So that goes into, so your sustainability is a whole gamut, right? So you got to make sure that you develop yourself. You got to make sure that your mindset is, in a growth mindset, because you got to continue to propel forward and go forward and move forward. So you got to constantly be thinking about the things that you want to do, how you're going to do them, because that's a forward mindset and a growth mindset. If you got a fixed mindset, you're already doomed, because you're not planning on making any changes. So that's going to stunt you already before you start. So you have to have a growth mindset, right? That's the only mindset you can have. So you want to make sure that you have the ability to be sustainable, to sustain what it is that you've done, the ability to maintain at a certain rate or level. This is where a lot of people, I think, get stuck, and it happens to all of us. Once we get to a certain place, then we plateau. We have to be able to sustain at a certain rate or level. Then you have to determine, what am I missing and what do I need to go to the next level, right? So you have to always be assessing where you are, making adjustments and pivoting when it's necessary, because things don't stay the same. They're always changing. So when you get in the game of doing your own thing, you got to be ready to rock and roll. So you got to rock with the things that go well. You got to roll with the things that don't. And then you got to move forward when you need to make a shift, when you need to pivot. So sustainability is key. So that's the ability to maintain at a certain rate or a certain level. And so that means you got to bring energy to the game. That means you got to keep your health up. That means you got to eat right. You got to exercise. You got to do all the things that are necessary to keep your mind going. And you got to exercise your brain. So you got to read. And especially if you're a knowledgepreneur, you got to fill yourself with content that's going to help you to continue to excel and grow. And even if it's not a knowledgepreneur, whatever your endeavor is, whatever your industry is, you should always be filling yourself with things that will help you to be better in that area. Right. So if there's, if there's a cutting edge software, if there's, if there's information that's come out, or there's somebody that's an expert in that area, then you need to attach yourself, follow, read, whatever the case may be, attend conferences, go to seminars, go to workshops, things of that nature, so that you can continue to grow, right? Because you want to fill that well as much as possible. So you always have something to draw from it. Because if you don't feel it, then it runs dry, and then you don't have anything to draw from it. All right. So, and then the other thing about your sustainability, you have to sustain, because there's someone else that you're going to have to help maintain what they do, because your gift is for somebody else. And then number 5 is manageability. So this is the art of your use strategy, because you want to be working toward the goal of making sure that what it is that you do has the quality of being easy and possible to deal with, meaning you develop a system that you can manage. That goes back to your operability, the ability to keep a system in a safe and reliable functioning condition. So you want to make sure that there's manageability. So you want to determine what it is you do well. It also incorporates what I said earlier about maximizing on your strengths and hiring your weaknesses. So you want to make sure that whatever you set out to do, that you don't set out to do something that has 49 products. Well, you can't manage that you can't manage all of that. You got to determine what's going to, and if you need to start out with 2 or 3 products or 2 or 3 services, and this is hypothetical and an example, but if you need to start out with what is manageable for you so that you can sustain it, maintain it, and then be responsible and accountable to it and show up and be available all the time, then that's what would be the best approach. That would be your starting strategy. You start with something that is manageable for you. So manageability is also key. And, I think I definitely want to dive a little bit deeper with this, but I wanted to share this because, like I said, I've been having these conversations, and a lot of it is that we have to understand that a lot of the things that we want and, we desire, it's incumbent upon us. We have to have a use strategy, right? And so the other thing is that we use this line, especially as believers, we use it all the time. I'm just waiting on God to show me, and whatever God say, and da. Well, no, you ain't waiting on him, because everything that God's going to do has already been done. So you're not waiting on God to do anything. God's waiting on you. So that means you got to show up. You got to be available. You got to be accountable. You have to be responsible. You have to, have sustainability. You have to have manageability. So you're not waiting on God to tell you or show you. God's waiting on you to make the decision. God's waiting on you to show up. God's waiting on you to be available. He's waiting on you to be accountable to you. So that's the person. That's the strategy that we first need to really chime into, and that's the strategy of you. So just some tips I wanted to share with you today, and I'm going to review them before I go. But definitely listen, share this with somebody. And, it may not be anything somebody's thought about, but I wanted to share it today and just give you something to really think about. And just, as you think about the different areas that I've talked about, just think about how are you performing in those areas? What are you doing every day to make sure that you are working towards success? And if you're wanting God to increase what you're doing, if you're wanting God to draw people to you, if you're wanting God to send clients, whatever the case may be, get up every day, show up, and give God 150%, right? You got to give him something to work with. You got to give God something to bless, something to increase, something to grow, something to give you opportunity to do, all right? So number 1 was availability. Number 2, accountability. Number 3, responsibility. Number 4, sustainability. And number 5, manageability. This is the use strategy. Listen, share this with somebody. Have a good rest of your day, and I'll see you guys next week. Be blessed.